member for Carleton Trail, Eagle Creek.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in this House today to discuss the government's proposed changes to bail and sentencing in Bill C-14. In order to better understand this bill, I believe we need to reflect on how we got to this point. Because while the Liberals are now acknowledging that bail reform is needed, what they are hoping Canadians will forget is that they have been in power for a decade and introduced the legislation that severely jeopardized the safety of Canadians. And before I go on, Mr. Speaker, I will be splitting my time with the member for Peace River Westlock. For years now, Canadian families, communities, and neighbourhoods have witnessed the catch and release crime wave that has swept across our nation. The Liberals talk about the need for judicial independence, yet with Bill C-75, they took what used to be a judge's decision on granting bail after weighing and considering previous case law and put their thumb on the scale by codifying the principle of least restraint, which directs courts and police to release accused persons, quote, at the earliest reasonable opportunity and under the least onerous conditions. For 6 years, the Liberals have told Canadians that they haven't ruined the bail system and that they're not responsible for catch and release policies that have led to a spike in crime. But let's look at some stats since they've been in power. From 2015 to 2023, auto theft is up 45%, extortion up 357%, gang-related homicides up 78%. Cars are being stolen from people's driveways while they sleep. Violent home break-ins have gotten so bad that police issue warnings for families to leave their keys at the door in the hopes that home invaders wouldn't come further into their house and endanger the people living there. Talk about creating a new norm of not only fear but helplessness as Canadians are feeling left to fend for themselves. To make matters worse, the Liberals added Bill C-5, which allowed for re-permitting conditional sentence orders or house arrest for serious offenders, including sexual assault. In many cases, this allowed violent abusers back into the homes and communities of the people they are a danger to. It also allowed for kidnappers, human traffickers, and people who abduct children under 14 to be given house arrest. Mr. Speaker, letting a violent abuser back into the very home of the people they are a danger to is not compassion, like the Liberals have claimed over the last several years. Just earlier this month, the Prime Minister said that letting violent sexual assault abusers off on house arrest is wrong and that they intended to fix it. It took 3 years for this Liberal government to figure out that letting people convicted of sexual assault serve house arrest was a bad thing. No intimate partner, family, or community should have to live in fear that someone who commits sexual assault could be given house arrest. While the Liberals have continued to put the rights of violent criminals ahead of victims, Conservatives believe in putting the rights and protections of victims first. Now, members opposite me from the Liberal benches will say they're bringing forward positive changes and that Canadians should be satisfied. That repealing the principle of restraint in C-75 will not solve the problem since there is a precedent set by court rulings. But what they fail to own up to, Mr. Speaker, is that they're the ones who created the precedents in the first place. In Bill C-14, the Liberals are proposing a change to clarify that the principle of restraint does not require release. Now, why would the government need to clarify that their legislation doesn't require violent offenders to be released unless it currently does just that? Having said that, this clarification does not repeal the least onerous conditions set out in the Liberals' catch and release bail laws, still provides a pathway to release, and remains the directive that is to be applied. Let's be clear. Conservatives have been advocating for changes to the broken Liberal bail system. We've advocated for the tools that our judges can use to keep violent repeat offenders off the streets. We've advocated for changes so the brave men and women who serve as first responders and police officers don't have to arrest the same violent repeat offenders over and over again. While C-14 does provide for outcomes that do prevent the overly broad catch and release policies that allow for repeat violent offenders to be withheld, it falls short of an actual repeal of the policy that made it possible in the first place. For years now, I, together with my colleagues, have stood in this place and shared the stories of what is happening in our communities and of the victims of the Liberals' soft-on-crime approach. Their broken bail system started 6 years ago. It has taken 6 years and too many devastating accounts for the Liberals to finally act and put forward any changes that reverse course on their disastrous bail legislation. What is the excuse for not acting sooner? Make no mistake, Conservatives have been right on this all along. We've never lost sight of the victims of violent crime or those who protect our communities. Mr. Speaker, our first responders and police officers put their lives at risk every single day to keep us safe. What firefighters do not need is to put their lives at risk putting out yet another fire caused by arson that's tied to an extortion investigation. Nor are police officers who have to arrest the same violent offenders who are out on bail dozens of times over, or the nurses and doctors who work treating the sick and wounded who have been victims of violent assaults in the hospitals they work in. To add insult to injury, the Liberals repealed mandatory minimum sentences on violent firearm offences, including robbery with a firearm, extortion with a firearm, weapons trafficking, and importing illegal firearms. How does this make our communities safer, knowing that the people who commit offences like these do not have to serve a mandatory prison sentence? It doesn't. Remove the mandatory punishment for committing a crime and watch the incidence of that crime increase. Direct judges to grant the least onerous conditions for bail that lets the criminals out the same day they committed the violent crime, and watch them continue to commit violent crimes. That is why Conservatives put forward the Jail Not Bail Act before this House. And while the Liberals have signaled they will not support the bill, it is an opportunity to take action that would protect victims. C-14 was inspired by the measures put forward by Conservatives, calling on the government to change course on their disastrous bail policies. However, it is still a half measure that after 3 years refuses to acknowledge the pain caused by allowing sexual offenders to be given house arrest while claiming to be standing up for the victims of their own policy. Mr. Speaker, even though the Liberals have proposed that violent sexual offenders will no longer be eligible for house arrest, they are also proposing with this bill that kidnappers and human traffickers will remain eligible for house arrest.
Thanks, Larry.
Conservatives have pushed and will continue to for legislation that cracks down on crime rather than encourages it. We disagree with the Liberal government's decision to keep the directive for judges to release offenders on the least onerous conditions, and will seek to ensure, through amendments, that kidnappers, human traffickers, and those who abduct children under 14 don't get to serve house arrest in the communities they are a danger to. I look forward to hearing the testimony that will be provided at committee once this bill is sent there, and I welcome the members opposite to ensure that they will be doing the same. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments?